Hello all out there in YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Horror Talk, the show where I ramble on and on about a specific topic of horror. Anyway, as you can tell by the title of this video, today, for my subscribers, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences as a former paranormal investigator. A little context for everybody. When I did my Horror Talk video on found footage horror movies, I mentioned that I had a hard time with the Paranormal Investigation movies because I used to be a paranormal investigator. And one of the things we would do as paranormal investigators would be watching a video of a room waiting for something to happen. So because of that, whenever I watched the first Paranormal Activity, I felt like I was working. So after I mentioned that, a lot of people wanted me to talk about some of my experiences as a paranormal investigator, so for all those who wanted to know, I'm giving that to you in this video right now. Before we get going here, I will talk about some of my experiences, but one of the things I really wanted to do in this video was clear a lot of misconceptions and issues that I have with the paranormal investigation community. Yes, I am a former paranormal investigator, and I am very happy that I was that. I am not ashamed to admit that at all. It's just, there are a lot of misconceptions about paranormal investigation, and I wanted to clear that up in this video here. And I'm probably going to annoy a lot of people in this video. I will get into some of my experiences and stuff like that, but before we did that, I wanted to try to educate people a little bit about being a paranormal investigator and what it's really like to be a paranormal investigator, not what you see in the TV shows and stuff like that. Beforehand, I will clarify, yes, I was part of a paranormal investigation team back when I was in my 20s, my early 20s. And I ended up leaving the group. I'm not going to go into details as of why. All I will say is I wasn't the only one who left the group. We left the group, a lot of people left the group because of we weren't happy with the direction the group was going, and that's all I will say out of respect for everyone involved. The two questions that I always get when people find out that I used to be a paranormal investigator, I used to get two very common questions, and I still get those questions whenever somebody finds out that I used to be a paranormal investigator. The first question I always got was, "Are you psychic?" I apologize for that, but I always hated when people asked me that. Usually I would always be asked, "Am I psychic?" which would soon be followed up with people telling me how they are psychic. I'm gonna say this right now. Do people a favor. If you ever come across somebody who does paranormal investigation, please don't talk about your psychic experiences. Okay? I mean, look, I am open to beliefs, and I believe everyone has the right to believe in whatever they want, but I have had so many people in my life ask me if I'm psychic, or tell me about how they're psychic. I'm going to clear the air right now. No. I am not psychic. I have no psychic abilities. I don't want any psychic abilities. This glass of water right here that I have to drink, this has more psychic abilities than I do. Okay? And no disrespect to anybody who believes in psychics and stuff like that. It's just that I don't like people using psychic visions as evidence of the paranormal. Like, I don't know if psychics exist or not. I'm not going to debate that. But if someone does have a psychic image or a psychic vision, that's something that affects them and them alone. When I look at paranormal evidence, I want something along the lines of a video or a photo or something like that, and you have to be careful with those, and we'll get into that in a minute. I've gotten really annoyed with people telling me they're psychic because I don't know the exact number of people who have told me they're psychic, but I can safely say it's over 50. Over 50 people have told me that they're psychic somehow. And out of those 50 people, I am open to the possibility of one person. Only one person. And that's because I know this person. And the reason I like this person is because they are like me. They don't believe psychic images or anything like that is valid evidence of the paranormal. And again, I want to make that clear. The reason I don't consider psychic images or, hey, I see a ghost over there as evidence is because that's something that can affect an individual. The other reason I am a little iffy with psychics and shit like that is because there are a lot of predatory people in the psychic community, the people who claim to be psychic. If there's ever money exchanged between someone who claims to be psychic and someone looking for a reading, be very skeptical about that, okay? I mean, if you do your research on psychics and the psychic for money community, you will find a very predatory group of people. It's scary. Do your research, go down that rabbit hole, and you'll find some scary shit. That's another reason why I am open to the possibility of this one person being psychic, because she doesn't go out and tell people about it. She's not looking for money. She's not going around saying to everybody, hey, I'm psychic. She goes out and tells people, be very, very careful with this particular group of people, especially if they're looking for money. The second thing that people have always asked me when they found out that I was a paranormal investigator is, do you like the TV show Ghost Hunters? Or, you know, Ghost Adventures and the paranormal TV shows? My answer to that is, I used to like those shows until I became a paranormal investigator. And then I stopped liking those shows. Ever since I became a paranormal investigator, I check one out every now and again, but I get bored very quickly. The thing about paranormal TV shows, and you have to understand this, is they are entertainment. They are there to try and entertain the masses. They are there to put on a show. I'm not going to say whether they're legitimate or not. That's not part of the discussion, but anybody who is curious about paranormal investigation and wants to get involved in paranormal investigation, you have to understand this one thing. Paranormal investigation in real life is not like paranormal investigation on TV. It's actually very, very boring. If you are going to get into paranormal investigation, you have to understand 90% of the time, nothing's going to happen. And you also have to understand that if something does happen, there's a very good chance that there is a natural explanation for what has happened. If you are looking to get a genuine paranormal experience, there's a good chance that it's going to be a while before you get one. You could find a location, like a house where you're allowed to go in and do paranormal investigation. You could go there time and time and time and time again and have nothing happen. That happened to me. So understand that 90% of the time, nothing's going to happen if you're getting into paranormal investigation. It's not that exciting. It can be very boring. What we said in our group was paranormal investigation was like fishing without conversation or beer. You're literally sitting in a room waiting to see if something happens. You're not talking, unless you're doing EVP work, which we'll get into, but you're not talking, you're just sitting, waiting to see if something happens. You could be sitting in there for hours. There might be a chance that you will experience something, but there's a very good chance that you won't experience anything. And even if something happens, there's a possibility of a logical, real-life explanation. And you need to make sure that you eliminate other possibilities before you say, oh, it's paranormal. Which brings me to why I have had no desire to get back into paranormal investigation. Because Let me clarify something here. I am what you call a skeptical believer. I do believe that there is weird shit out there that we can't explain. But I don't think everything I see is that. My mentality when I was a paranormal investigator, if I'm going into a house, like, if you were to come up to me and say, I think my house is haunted, I want you to come and check it out. I'm not going into your house to tell you that it's haunted. I'm going in to figure out what's going on. If I can find another explanation for what's causing these circumstances, I'm going to tell you that that might be what it is. You know, and you understand, somebody is asking you to go into their house because they think there's something there and they're worried about it. They're concerned for what's going on in their house. And you have to keep in mind that you don't live there, they do. So just because you don't experience something doesn't mean that something's not there. If you can come up with another explanation, let them know that explanation. But if things keep happening, you have to be sympathetic towards the clients that you are investigating for. Because again, they have to live with it. And you have to be careful with your words and, you know, what you say around them, because they're dealing with it, you're not. Skepticism is your most important tool, because if you're going to go into a situation, you're going to investigate a location, you have to have that in your mind that whatever you see, if something does happen, it could be something else. You want to eliminate any other possibilities. That's what you do when you're a paranormal investigator. If something happens, it's your job to eliminate as many other possibilities as you can. The more things you can eliminate of what it could be, the greater chance that it's a paranormal experience. So that's why I think it's very important to be skeptical when going in. Because if you go into a situation thinking everything is a ghost, you're never going to have a genuine paranormal experience. You're just going to think everything's paranormal. And that's one of the issues I have with paranormal investigation currently in the paranormal community. I think YouTube and social media is one of the worst things that could have ever happened to paranormal investigation, because it's all about the likes. It's all about getting that thrill. It's all about getting people to view your videos now. So you don't have people putting in the effort to see if it's actually a true experience. And you have so many people that fake stuff now. It's so hard to tell what's real and what's genuine. And again, I can't say whether it's real or not, because any experience that I've had with the paranormal, and I've had a couple, a lot of them I didn't have any video evidence. So I don't feel right calling it legitimate evidence. I can say it's something I've experienced, but because I didn't get anything on camera or audio or something like that, I don't feel right calling it evidence. I feel right calling it an experience, but because I don't have any documentation of it, I don't feel right calling it evidence. So, and I understand people are flawed. You know, people make mistakes all the time. But anyway, going back to the paranormal community now and why I have kind of lost the desire to rejoin paranormal investigation is because of this. I don't want to say it's because it's become mainstream. I don't want to sound like a hipster or pretentious or anything like that. But because it's become so ingrained with social media, getting views, getting likes, it's hard to find genuine videos, or videos that I think could actually be something paranormal. I really do think that paranormal investigation started going downhill when people started using spirit boxes. I don't like spirit boxes, because, for those of you who don't know what a spirit box is, paranormal investigators now use spirit boxes when trying to do EVPs. And when for those of you who don't know what an EVP is electronic voice phenomenon. in a place that is thought to be haunted. You have a recorder of some kind, you put it down, and you're asking questions to the air. And then you play back the tape, and you might get a voice responding to your questions. You have to be careful with EVPs, and we'll get into that. What a spirit box does is, because the people use spirit boxes because it gets like different frequencies, and it can bring different frequencies through. It catches radio waves and stuff like that. It captures radio waves, it captures cell phone signals and stuff like that. So you'll see people, they're talking to the air and they're talking to the spirit box, and then they'll hear a voice on the spirit box. And they'll say, oh, we got a reply. Spirit boxes, I'm going to tell you this right now, and I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people saying this. Spirit boxes are the worst thing you can use. Because again, being a paranormal investigator, you're trying to eliminate as many aspects as you can. Try to eliminate as many elements of you as you can of what it could be that you've caught on camera or on a recording. You want to eliminate any possibility that you can. You can't do that with spirit boxes because they capture radio waves and stuff like that. You could pick up someone's cell phone signal. You could pick up someone's radio station. There are so many aspects and elements that are picked up on the spirit box. There's just too many variables there. I mean, you're not eliminating those variables, you're adding more. And that's the problem. That's the problem with the current state of paranormal investigating. Again, what you're doing when you're investigating a haunted location, trying to get some legitimate paranormal activity caught on camera or a recording or in a photo, you're trying to eliminate those variables. You're trying to eliminate any other possibility of what it could be. And again, the more possibilities you eliminate and the more variables you eliminate, the more chances are that the less you can explain what it is, the greater chance it is that it's something paranormal. The community doesn't do that anymore. They use spirit boxes. They get the Paranormal Investigation app on their phone. And that's just, I'm sorry, but for me, that's not how you should be doing it. I'm going to tell you this right now. There is no paranormal ghost hunting app. There is no device that is going to make it so you can see a ghost. Those don't exist. Simplify it. Don't make it more complicated by using a device that can pick up radio waves. Use a simple digital audio recorder. If you're serious about doing some paranormal investigating, I will tell you the equipment that you will need. Nothing fancy. First of all, like I said, skepticism. You do want to approach everything with skepticism. Because, again, I know I'm saying this a lot, and I know it's going to get annoying, but that's true. You want to eliminate the other possibilities of what it could be. You're going to want to bring a camera, like, so you can record stuff, of course, like this or two. But keep in mind, any video that you capture, you're going to have to watch it. You got to remember that, okay? We've recorded this stuff, we're going to have to watch it all the way through. So you're going to be recording, like, a room. Let's say you're recording a room. Keep in mind that however long you recorded for, you're going to be watching for 1 hour longer than that. So let's say you record a room for 1 hour. You're going to be watching that video for 2 hours. If you record it for 2 hours, you're going to be watching that video for 3 hours. Because you're going to have to pause the video. If something happens, you're going to have to pause the video, write down what you saw and at what time. This which leads to the second thing that you need to bring with you. A notebook and a pencil. And a watch or a clock or something. Because while you're sitting there in that location, waiting to see if something happens, you're going to want to write down as much as you can of what happened. So let's say you're sitting in a house and you're waiting to see if a ghost shows up or something like that. If a car drives by that house, you're going to look at the time to see what time that car drove by. And you're going to write down that a car drove by at this time. So like you're at a house and, oh, 9:35, a car drove by the house. You're going to write down a car drove by at 9:35. You're going to write down that you heard, like, the house settling at 10:02. You're going to write down everything that you hear or see, even if it's something that you know is not paranormal, because that's very important. Because when you're watching the video later, and you're watching and you see a light go by the wall, it's like, oh, there was a light that went by the wall. You got to check your notes to see, oh, at this time a car drove by the house. That's what that light is. So you take the notes, you can match it up with your video, and then you can eliminate any of those natural things that you recorded and you wrote down, and then when something weird happens, you can check your notes and say, oh, okay, I don't have any way to explain what that was. And then you mark that down as important. Very important to take notes while you're sitting there waiting for something to happen. You're going to want to bring a flashlight, especially if you're going to like go into a house that's dark, or a cemetery, or woods that you think are haunted. Bring a flashlight. And I want to make this very clear. I don't know how this is in every other state, but here in Massachusetts, it's illegal to be in a cemetery after dark. Wherever you're going, like let's say you're investigating a historical landmark or something like that that's known for haunted history, get permission beforehand. I can't stress this enough. It is so important, whether you're going into a cemetery or an abandoned hospital or whatever, get permission first. I know it seems thrilling to sneak in there at night, but get permission, okay? And be very careful. Whenever we went to a cemetery or some kind of woods or something like that to do some paranormal investigating, we weren't really worried about running into ghosts. We were worrying about running into a meth lab or something. I mean, I am much more afraid of the living than I am of the dead. Okay, I mean, like, I remember when I was a kid, my friends would take me to this abandoned house next door, and I was terrified of running into some crazy hobo. That was my concern, not so much the ghosts. So anyway, like I said, video camera, notebooks, skepticism, a flashlight, and a watch so you can keep track of time. Bring a camera, which is really, like, to take pictures, which is easy nowadays because so many people have cameras on their phone. So that's an easy one to bring. A lot of people talk about EMF detectors, which are electromagnetic field detectors, which I don't really like using because, again, too many variables. What I like using an EMF detector for, what I liked using an EMF detector for, was checking around the house to see if there was any loose wires or malfunctioning appliances that could interfere with my equipment. That's all I really looked for in an EMF detector, but I don't like using those really. And then, of course, an audio recorder. Not a spirit box. Fuck spirit boxes. Just a simple digital recorder. Which brings us to EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon. You want to be very careful with electronic voice phenomenon. Because what you want to do is you want to take that tape recorder, don't hold it in your hand. Like, let's say this remote control was a digital recorder. When you're recording for EVPs or whatever, you don't want to hold it like this. You don't really want to hold it at all. If you're going to hold it, have it flat in your palm like this. Because there's less chance that your fingers will fiddle with the microphone or whatever. Because there is a chance, like, if your finger slides across the microphone, it could sound like an EVP. You have to be very careful with that. The best thing to do, other than holding it like that, which is, I'm going to say, this is the best way to hold it, but this is not ideal. The best thing to do would be to put your recorder down on something, don't touch it. then you start asking questions to the air. And your hope is that when you play the recording back, you'll hear a voice or something like that. The best way to do EVPs, and this is the way you need to do it, is just like with, sitting around waiting for something to happen, taking notes on everything you hear. While you're recording your EVPs, you want to say out loud anything you hear. Everything. So, like, you're doing your recordings, and you're asking questions, like, you ask, what is your name? And you're sitting there waiting. You hear a car going by. You say, car going by. You hear a bug flying around the room. You say, there's a bug flying around the room. You hear someone's stomach gurgle. You say, Jim's stomach gurgled. You hear Jim fart. You say, Jim passed gas. It's very important to do this, because even though you're using a digital recorder, a fart can sound like a voice. It can. I mean, you've seen the paranormal shows, and you've probably watched videos of people doing EVPs online. This is what bothers me about certain EVPs. The only EVPs I accept as evidence are when you can hear a clear voice and you can clearly hear what it says. You've seen it on Ghost Hunters, you've seen it on Ghost Adventures, you've seen it on videos on YouTube. A noise comes out, the people say what they think it says, and then they put words on the screen, that manipulates your perception. Now you're hearing what they are telling you to hear, and I don't like that. Because there are EVPs that sound just like this. Wah, 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 wah. That can sound like a voice, and then people's like, oh. Like, you hear, wah, 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 wah. I'm here for you. Wah, 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 wah. That I don't like. There's a way to do EVPs. I came up with this idea for a way to do EVPs, which unfortunately I left the group before I could implement this idea. But I don't like when a ghost hunting show or a video on YouTube tells you what they think it says, especially when it's muffled. There are different grades of EVPs, and the highest grade of EVP that you want is, again, when it's a clear voice. You can clearly hear what it says. It doesn't sound like, it sounds like, I'm here, or something like that. My entire time with this paranormal team that I was formerly on, I've only heard one EVP that legitimately sounded like a voice. And I'll get into the details of that. There was a woman who was a part of the team, I'm not going to say her name, but she was a good friend. She was a very good friend, one of the sweetest women you could ever meet. We would do tours in this village on Cape Cod. And there was an old wooden jail where we would do ghost hunting events, where people could come, and they could do ghost hunting in this jail. We had permission to be in this jail. It was a small jail. It wasn't like a big jailhouse. It was a small wooden jailhouse, just probably like the size of a living room, kind of, maybe a little bigger, but anyway. People were able to come there and do paranormal investigation. I wasn't here for this event, but my friend was. And while she was there, it was only women in this jailhouse. And they were doing an EVP session, and my friend was asking questions. And she noticed that the three women she was with, there was a blonde, there was a redhead, there was a brunette. So she decided to ask, do you like blondes, brunettes, redheads, or something else? There was only women at the jail that night. They got a recording, and she had me listen to the recording. I could hear the voice clearly. She didn't tell me what she thought it said, because every now and again during these ghost hunting tours we would bring this recording. We would not tell anyone what it said. We would have the group listen to it. They would hear my friend say, "Do you like blondes, brunettes, redheads, or something else?" We wouldn't have anybody say what they thought it said. We'd let everyone listen to it. We'd let one side listen to it, we'd let the other side listen to it, and then we'd have everyone all at once say what they think they heard. And we'd say, all together, "What did you hear?" And they would all say the same thing: something else. In that recording, you could clearly hear a man's voice whispering, "something else." You heard that. She asked, "Do you like blondes, brunettes, redheads, or something else?" And then you heard a male voice. When there was only women in that jail, you heard a man's voice say, "something else." Right after that, you heard her say, "stupid question," because she thought it was a dumb question, but she got a response. I have heard a lot of EVPs over the years. I have heard a lot of people with, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube with EVPs saying what they think it says. This is the only one I have ever heard where I heard a clear voice. This is so out of the hundreds of EVPs I've heard, there's really only one that I consider legitimate, which again shows my point of how rare it is for something to actually happen when you are doing paranormal investigating. So, yeah, I wanted to give that, forgive the long intro there, but I really wanted to get that out of the way, to show how different paranormal investigation used to be to how it is now, and the importance of being skeptical when approaching paranormal investigation. And I'm going to say this right now, I don't like orbs. Every time, you see a paranormal video or something like that, and you see an orb, people are going, "Oh my god, orbs." I don't like orbs. Because again, too many variables. It could be dust, it could be moisture, it could be a bug. Orbs are 99% explainable. That's why I don't like using them as evidence for the paranormal. I'm sorry, I don't like orbs. But that being said, I know you guys didn't come here to listen to me talk about how not to do a paranormal investigation. You came here wanting to know my experiences. Now, I did have, because I went to quite a few places when I did paranormal investigation. And I also helped out with the tours in the town where we did. Now, we did the tours so much, sometimes stuff happened, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes I was not present when something happened, sometimes I was. So the tours and places we investigated, some weird shit has happened to me that I can't explain. Before I get into the creepy shit, I'm going to talk about two little events that I can't explain. This isn't the ghost stuff. I'll get into the ghost stuff, but these are just before we do that, two little incidences that I found really weird, and I can't explain them, and I have yet to find anybody that could explain them as well. Talking about my friend again who was on the team, the woman that I made friends with on the team I was a part of. She was a Wiccan. And whenever somebody hears Wiccan, they have this image in their mind of some woman with a pointy hat and carries a cat and wears a shawl. But she was one of the nicest women I've ever met in my life. Very sweet, very normal. I mean, don't think that Wiccans are all a bunch of weirdos. I mean, she wasn't a wannabe Wiccan. She wasn't a Wiccan because she was looking for attention. She had been a Wiccan for years. I mean, she was, I believe, in her 40s when I first met her. She liked to use those dowsing rods. And for those of you who don't know what that is, you've probably heard of dowsing sticks before. Have you ever seen, those old videos or those old photos where someone is carrying a forked stick in the desert and they use that to find water? I've always been very skeptical of those dowsing sticks, and dowsing rods are the same thing. They are wires shaped like an L. They're both shaped like an L, and you hold them in your hands like this. You hold one in this hand, one in that hand. And they swing back and forth, and they're meant to find energy. Everything gives off energy, so people use dowsing rods, and they think they can use them to find ghosts because ghosts are made of energy and all that. But, so my friend, she would use these dowsing rods before, and the way they work is they point in a direction, you go in that direction. And you keep going until they eventually cross, and wherever they cross, that's wherever what you're looking for is, at the cross. And she told me numerous times that she's used her dowsing rod, like, she would lose her phone, and she would use the dowsing rod to find her phone, and she would lose her glasses, and she'd use the dowsing rods to find her glasses. I was always skeptical about this, because again, I approach everything with skepticism. So one day I asked her, hey, can I give those a shot? She says, sure. She hands me the dowsing rods, I've got them in my hand, and I was just being a smartass. I said, where's Waldo? I was just joking around. I said, where's Waldo? And then the dowsing rods pointed in that direction, to which I jokingly said, I guess that's where he is. My friend says, come with me. Now here's the setup here. So the dowsing rods pointed that way, and there's a wall here, and there's the walls, and then there's a doorway which leads to the dining room. So on the other side of the wall is a bookshelf. And on the bookshelf, in the exact spot where the dowsing rods were pointing, were 4 Where's Waldo books. I can't explain what the hell happened there. I mean, to this day, I can't explain it. I was being a smartass. I was not being serious. I was making a joke. Give me the dowsing rods. Where's Waldo? And they led me to 4 Where's Waldo books. To this day, I can't explain what happened. I can't find anybody else to explain to me how the hell that happened. If you can think of an explanation, let me know. The second little thing that I just found interesting that I can't explain before we get into the creepy stuff. So, we were doing a ghost tour in the town where we would do this tour. And the tour would, depending on what we would do, sometimes we would end this at a house called the House of 11 Ghosts. Creepy title, I know. Or other times we would end it in a cemetery, depending on what the tour wanted to do. And there were some nights where we had ghost hunting tours, where people could wander around the cemetery at night. So we were setting up for, I think it was a ghost hunting tour, but we were setting up the flashlights. It was me and 2 other people there. And the one guy who was the head of the group, he was setting up flashlights for this particular tour. And one of the flashlights, the batteries were dead. So he said, all right, so he undoes, and the way it worked is what you had the flashlight, and it had one of you unscrew the top and you drop the batteries in. So he unscrews the top, puts that down, takes out the old batteries, puts them away, opens up a package of fresh new batteries. I know you think you know where this is going, but don't get ahead of me. It's not going the way you think. So he drops one battery in there, drops a second battery in there, puts the screw back on the top, tries to light the flashlight, flashlight doesn't turn on. Again, it was using this. This was the recorder, now it's the flashlight. This is the top of the flashlight. He was holding it like this the entire time. He unscrewed the top, dropped one battery in, dropped the other battery in, screwed the top back on. Tried to turn it on. Flashlight didn't turn on. Unscrews the top. There are no batteries in the flashlight. There were 3 of us there. All 3 of us, well, there were I should say, the head of the group, who was holding the flashlight, me, and another person. So there was 3 of us there, and 2 of us watched him put the batteries in the flashlight. And we heard them go in, one at a time. He never turned it upside down, he never moved it, he just screwed the top back on, tried to turn it on, unscrewed the top, batteries were gone. We saw them go in there. Again, to this day, I can't explain it. We even looked on the ground, because it wasn't dark yet. I mean, because we would always start the tours in the daytime, and then save the cemetery or the House of 11 Ghosts for the end of the tour when it's dark. But again, we looked at the ground. I mean, there was an incline, so the batteries would have had to roll down to this location. We couldn't find them. There was no possible way for them to leave that flashlight. To this day, I can't explain it. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the creepier shit here. So this is another thing that happened to me on the tour. It didn't really happen to me. It kind of happened to me. Okay, let me get into the details. So we were setting up for a ghost hunting tour. The head of the team was doing the tour, going through the town. We were setting up the equipment in the cemetery, where we would do the investigation at the end of the night. So anyway, we're setting up our equipment in the graveyard, and we needed to get some new digital recorders. So my friend, she waited in the cemetery while I went to Radio Shack, because are Radio Shacks still around? There are none in my town. Let me know if there's any Radio Shacks around. But anyway, I was going to Radio Shack, I bought a couple digital recorders, and I brought them back to the cemetery. So I get back to the cemetery, and I left my friend alone there, and I shouldn't have done that. Something you need to know about paranormal investigation: never leave anybody alone anywhere. But this was in the middle of a town. It was a place we had been to hundreds of times. So, yeah, I was gone for maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30, between 20 and 30 minutes. And I had gotten there, when I had left the cemetery, my friend, she was standing right there. Like right here. We'll say she was standing right here. And by the time I had gotten back, she had made it here. She had moved like maybe 2 or 3 steps from where she was. Now, I came in and I said, "Are you alright?" Because she was clearly freaked out. And she said, as I was moving through the cemetery, I thought I heard a voice say, "That's it, stay right there." Now, I wasn't here to experience this part, so... But I believed her, I trusted her. And she mentioned how she thought she saw a shadowy figure move back and forth between a couple of gravestones on the hill. So we figured, okay, let's get out of the cemetery and we'll wait for the group to come, and we've got everything here, we've got it all set up. So we're leaving the cemetery. She was ahead of me, and she got out of the cemetery before me. Setting up this situation, I'm walking back past a row of gravestones. They're like right here. I'm on this side. And as I'm walking, I hear footsteps on the other side of the gravestones. I stop. And the footsteps, like, you know when someone's walking with you and you stop without notice and they take a couple of steps before they stop? That's what happened. I'm walking, I hear these footsteps on the other side of the gravestone. I stop. They took a couple other steps before they stopped. And again, I didn't have any of this on a recording, and that's why I can't really call it evidence. It's just an experience that I experienced. I did one of these. You know, I'm walking, I hear the footsteps, I stop, I hear the footsteps stop, and I did one of these. Huh. And then I got out of the cemetery. It was weird. It was just a weird experience, but it wasn't as creepy as this next experience. The next two things that I'm going to tell you about are the creepiest things I've ever experienced. I'm going to tell you something that happened not to me, but to a member of the team. I was with them. And then I'm going to tell you about something that I experienced myself. And these are the 2 creepiest stories I have. I have a few other stories, but I figured I'd narrow it down to these stories because these are the scariest ones. We were doing an investigation in a cemetery. Hey, another cemetery. Ooh. we have this cemetery, and the cemetery has a lot of creepy shit that happens there. People have seen a woman dressed in black cross the roads. We would see this mysterious woman in black crossing the roads. You wouldn't see orbs, you would see wisps of light. Not orbs, like wisps and stuff like that. You would hear voices, people would be touched. And then there was this one corner of the cemetery. There's woods outside of the cemetery. And there's like a line. You have the line where the cemetery begins and then where the woods is. It's a really creepy area. Even in broad daylight, this corner of the woods right outside of this corner of the cemetery was always dark. And I shit you not, in this area, the trees that were in the cemetery that were pointing towards this spot in the woods, one side of those trees, this wasn't just one tree, this was like a few trees. The side of the trees facing the cemetery, alive, blooming, even in the middle of spring and summer, like blooming, leaves all over the place. The sides facing this area of the woods outside of the cemetery, dead. Those sides of the trees were dead. There weren't any leaves on the branches. It was really creepy. And we've been told by a few people that, you know, it said that there's something in those woods outside of the cemetery that's never been human. So it's not like a spirit of a ghost or something. It's like something inhuman. No one knows what it is. A couple of psychics have said what it is, and I'm a little skeptical about that, but there was something in those woods. It's said that whatever is living in those woods has unfinished business with someone in the cemetery, but because the cemetery is hollowed ground, it can't cross over into the cemetery. I need to do this setup before I can tell you what happened, because it's very important to what happened. So, people would go there in the daytime, people who were part of the team, and they would stand near the woods. And they'd start to walk away, and then they would hear a noise in the woods. So they'd step back over, looking out into the woods, wait. Nothing would happen. They'd start walking away again, and then they'd hear the noise again. They'd walk back closer to the woods. Wait. Nothing's going on, so they'd start walking away again, hear the noise again. They'd start walking back closer to the woods. And they'd notice that they'd be getting closer and closer to the woods every time. So it was like whatever was in the woods was luring them towards the woods. It's creepy. We had a member of our team, I'm not going to say what his name is, I'm going to call him Phil. Okay? Just for the sake of this story. Now, when Phil first joined the team, he had a friend. He brought a couple friends to the cemetery, and he said, something's out in those woods. We don't know what it is. We don't like to mess with it. He had a friend. She went into the woods and said, "Ha ha, who are you? Come get me. Yeah, you're chicken." She comes out of the woods. This is more than likely just coincidence, but it's creepy. 2 weeks later, she found out she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She didn't have a single symptom before she went into the woods. 2 weeks after she went into the woods, she suddenly has, like, stage 3 breast cancer. After, like, only a few months, she lost any trace of it. There was no trace of that breast cancer in her body after only a few months. Now, again, I don't want to say that, oh, that caused cancer, but it was just a creepy coincidence. But then we had someone who was part of another team. It was like it wasn't our team, but it was a team we were affiliated with. They came down to the cemetery. He stepped into the woods, and then suddenly he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. I don't want to say the two are connected, but it was just a creepy coincidence. But anyway, so we did not like the woods. And my friend Phil was particularly worried because it was his friend that this happened to. So he thinks that there was something going on. So this one night we're in the cemetery. There was another team that had joined us. And Phil and I and 2 other people decided to hang out near this area of the woods near the cemetery. We stayed in the cemetery. And now, here's a little more setup in here. You had the cemetery, you had the edge of the woods, and it dropped down. Like, there was like a 4-foot kind of a hill that went into this wooded gully area. So, Phil and I are doing some EVPs. We're sitting there, we're talking to the woods, we're asking questions to the woods. Phil and I are there, you know, we're talking back and forth. And then all of a sudden, Phil just kind of stopped talking to me. I didn't think much of it. I thought he was just paying attention to the woods. But we're sitting there, we're talking to the woods. Every now and again, I say something to Phil. He doesn't respond. We're just standing there, just looking into the woods, seeing if something happens. And then all of a sudden I hear... It was Phil, taking a couple steps closer into the woods. And again, you have the woods, and then you have that 4-foot drop-off into that gully. I said, "Hey, Phil, be careful, you're going into the woods." He doesn't respond to me. A few more minutes go by, and then he takes a couple more steps towards the woods. I say, "Phil, be careful." I'm not looking at him yet, I'm just keeping focused on the woods. I say, "Phil, be careful." Still no response. A few more minutes go by, and again. And I turn to Phil, I say, "Phil, be careful, you're going to fall into the woods." I look at him, and he's next to me, but he's not there. He's limp. He doesn't look like he's holding himself up on his own accord. And I want to make something very clear here. Phil sucks at playing jokes. He's one of those people when he tries to play a joke on someone, he's like... Something was off here. He was limp, like his knees were bent. He was like this, and his face was just like blank. He was like gone. I'm like, "Phil, are you okay?" And he's not really responding to me. He's just holding up. He looks like he's about to collapse, but something is holding him up. And it was that point, like, again, you have the 4-foot drop-off. He's outside of the woods. Let's say this is Phil here. He suddenly almost does a nosedive into the woods. Like, he's falling forwards into the woods, into that 4-foot drop, just like this, just whoom. As he's falling, I reach out. I barely manage to grab the hood of his jacket. He was wearing a hoodie or a jacket or something, and I managed, that's what I grabbed. I grabbed that thing as he's falling into the woods. Not like falling as in he's tripping, like he's deliberately trying to fall into the woods. If I had not grabbed his hoodie, he would have taken a header right into the woods. I grab that, and I pull him back. And here's where he gets even creepier. He's fighting with me. I'm holding him back, and he's desperately trying to pull into the woods. I yank him back. The other two members of that were with us, they were a little further back. I say, "Hey, give me a hand here." And they come up and they grab Phil, and we're holding on to him. It took 3 of us to hold him back from going into the woods. And he was skinnier than me. I mean, like, I'm a skinny guy, but he's skinnier than I am. And it's taking 3 of us to prevent him from charging into the woods. We're holding him back. And again, he's gone. He's just got this blank stare on his face. It was so creepy. So we're holding him back as he's trying to pull into the woods, and we're just holding him there. And we're trying to get him to acknowledge us, because he's just gone. We're trying to get him back of whatever the hell's going on with him. And this is where I'm going to use my handy remote control again. This was one of the creepiest parts of that experience. Phil was holding a flashlight the entire time. We both were, because we're in a cemetery at night. We had permission to be there. It's dark. And you could trip over a tombstone and smash your face on another one. So we wanted to make sure we saw stuff. So we're saying this is the flashlight. Phil is holding this flashlight. And as we're trying to get him to, acknowledge us as we're trying to get his wits about him again. We're sitting there, trying to get, waiting to see what happens, trying to figure out what's going on. And every now and again, he takes his flashlight and he just shines it right into his eyes. He's like holding it right on his face. And this is the thing about it. You see a bright light, you flinch, like you have a flashlight in your eyes, you look away. He wasn't looking away. This wasn't just like he's doing a quick flash like that. He's holding the flashlight up to his face and staring at it for like at least 5 seconds before he puts it back down and looks at the woods again. And we're looking at him, and he didn't just do this once. He did this like 3 times, 3 or 4 times, where he took the flashlight, he just shines it into his eyes. And he's looking like this. This is how he's looking. He's not squinting, he's not blinking, he's not looking away. He's like staring directly at this flashlight that's beaming right in his eyes. And then he looks back at the woods. He did this like I said, 3 or 4 times until we finally asked him, "Why are you doing that?" His response was just like this: "'Cause it likes it." Freaked me the fuck out. And I'm sitting there like, we need to get him away from here. It took us a while. I don't know exactly how long it took us to get him back to some form of normal. But we managed to get him to start acting normal again. He still seemed a little off. And so we decided to get him away from that corner of the woods. And we decided to walk around the cemetery and just check out a few other things. As we're walking around the cemetery, every now and again he stops and he looks back towards that corner of the woods again. So I'm sticking with him because I'm worried about him at this point. But we keep going, and he's still not fully with us, and he's still, every now and again, he's just stopping and looking back towards the woods. Then finally, he stops, and he starts going towards the woods again. We're a distance away from it now. He turns back toward the woods and starts going towards the woods again. I grabbed him, and I forced him back onto the path that we're going on through the cemetery. For the rest of our time through the cemetery, I had to walk with my hands on his shoulders, because every now and again he tried to force his way to go back to the woods. And I had to force him back on the path. I had to walk the rest of the tour, or the rest of the little trip through the cemetery, with my hands on his shoulders, forcing him on the right path. Towards the end of the night, we managed to get him back to normal again, but he was never really the same after that. He was this fun, happy-go-lucky guy. He was a really sweet guy, really funny, but he was never the same after that. His girlfriend started to become afraid of him. Something happened to him after that, and I still don't know what it was, but it was fucking creepy. I mean, I don't know if it was a possession, I don't know what the hell happened to him, but it was one of the freakiest experiences of my life. But the story I want to end this on, I wanted to end it on an experience that I personally had. It's something that happened to me. Like, the first story was just an interesting little tidbit that I thought was kind of strange. The second one was a freaky thing that happened to a friend of mine who was part of the team. This final story I decided to end with is something that personally happened to me. Even though I think the experience with Phil is scarier, this one, because it happened to me personally, I thought this was the appropriate one to end on. This once again happened during the tour that I would help out with, that the paranormal group would do. So like I said, we would do the tour, we would take them around this village on Cape Cod that is haunted. It has a lot of haunted stuff and a lot of history to it. So we would go around, talking about the hauntings and the history. And we usually, like I said, we'd have two options of how we wanted to end the tour. We would end the tour with the cemetery, or we would end the tour with this house that had been dubbed the House of 11 Ghosts. So, we were there one night, and the way it worked was, this house had changed hands numerous times. There was, it would go, like, it was an insurance company once, then it was an attorney company once. Or attorneys at law, an office for attorneys at one point. People would come there and then they would leave because of the hauntings that happened there. So the way we would do it is we would have the house, the house would be right there, and there was the sidewalk and a spot where we would have the tour stand and watch the house as we would talk about it. So whoever was, I was not giving the tour, I was helping out with the tour, and the head of the group would do the tour. I was there to help out. I was there basically to watch the rear or something like that, make sure no one wanders off the sidewalk and stuff like that. But anyway, the way we would do it is we would stay at the front of the house and talk about the house, have people watch the house as we're doing this stuff, because the house would perform sometimes. Not all the time, but every now and again, creepy shit would happen. Like, we would have someone go up and knock on the door of this building, and then the house would knock back. This was after closing, so nobody was there. And, people would see shadowy figures on the corner of the house sometimes. It was really creepy. But anyway, or shadows moving across the windows. Yeah, that's what happened. They would stop at the front of the house. We would talk about, whoever was giving the tour would talk about the house. Then we would take them to a side door where they could look in at a rocking chair that would supposedly rock on its own. And we've seen it rock on its own a couple times during the tour. It was weird. And then we would take them to a deck out back and talk about stuff that would happen in the Great Marsh. There's a big marsh that stretches from, I think, Orleans or Harwich through to Falmouth on Cape Cod. It's the biggest marsh in Massachusetts. And there's some freaky stories there, so we would start at the front of the house, move to the side of the house, then go to the back of the house and talk about, the creepy stuff that happened in the marsh. So, we're doing this tour. The head of the group is, going back and forth and doing the spiel, and I'm watching the house like everyone else is. And I think something's going on in one of the windows. So I watch that window, and then all of a sudden, I see this dark figure go past the window. It freaked me out. I wasn't the only one who saw this figure. There were two other women on the tour. They saw it too. So they were able to vouch for me that it was there. But it was a dark shadow shaped like a person that moved past the window. Now, as soon as that shadow passed by the window, I instantly started feeling not well. And it was instant too. As soon as that shadow passed by the window, I started feeling sick. I felt like I was gonna pass out. I was feeling dizzy. I was having a hard time maintaining my thing. I wasn't saying anything to anybody because I didn't want them to freak out. And I didn't want people to think, oh, he's just acting because he's part of the tour. So I was just keeping my mouth shut. And there's something going on with my eyes. It's like my eyes are feeling weird. I feel like they're going to pop out of my sockets. It just didn't feel right. And I was feeling so wrong. I was dizzy. I felt nauseous. I was having a hard time standing up. But I'm trying to keep it together. So the tour guide, he finishes his spiel at the front, and then we start moving around to the side. And I have to walk, but I'm trying to maintain here because I literally feel like I'm going to pass out. And what's happening to my eyes is getting worse. I noticed that what was going on with my eyes was pulling. It felt like someone had their hand over my eyes like this. I could feel fingertips. Like, I could feel the tips of someone's fingers behind my eyes. Like someone was reaching through and grabbing onto my eyes and pulling like this. Picture like this, but only with the fingers, like, touching the back of my eyes. That's what it felt like. And I stepped away from the group, and I just said quietly to myself, whatever you are, get away from me. The pulling instantly stopped. It felt like whatever was grabbing me there let go. And I started to feel a little better. I still wasn't right. I was still dizzy. I was still having a hard time standing. I was still feeling a little nauseous. But it went away. We did the whole thing, the whole spiel. Everybody was able to, had a good time. And we made it back to where we had parked the cars. And when we got there, I needed to sit down because I just wasn't feeling right. And that's when the two women vouched for me that they saw the shadow too. But they didn't feel sick afterwards. I was the only one who felt fingers pulling on my eyes. It just was a weird experience. And ever since that, I was always nervous going back to that house for the tour. It's not a good feeling to have someone pulling on your eyes. I don't know if you've ever felt someone pulling on your eyes, but it's unpleasant. So, yeah, those are a few tales from my experience as a paranormal investigator. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to paranormal investigation. I don't think I am. I'm happy where I am right now. I like talking about fiction. But I've always had a fascination with ghosts. I've always had a fascination with ghost stories. And people wanted to know about this, so I thought it would be a fun little video for around Halloween. I don't know if members of my audience believe in ghosts or whether they don't believe in ghosts. That doesn't really matter. You're allowed to believe whatever you want to believe. I'm not here to convince anybody one way or the other. I'm just here to talk about fun shit on my channel. And I thought this would be a fun video for the Halloween season. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Thank you for the continued support. Thank you for all the kind comments that I've been getting. Yeah, I've had a few negative comments here and there, but for the most part, they've been positive comments, and thank you all so much for that. Thank you all so much for, continuing to watch, continuing to, comment on these videos. I cannot thank you enough for the continued support. Leave a comment down below. Let's keep this fun. What are some of your favorite ghost movies? And if you had any paranormal experiences, by all means leave them down below. I'd love to hear them. But on that note, we will continue the Halloween extravaganza next week. Until next time, this is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.